Okay, great to see everybody. I'm glad you guys are here. Some of you might have actually come to Jeff Waldman and Susie Martin's amazing social HR camp recently, where I did a similar presentation. I had to do it really quickly, though, because I had 20 minutes. And I always thought, oh, there is so much more that we could be talking about, and we could go through this more slowly. I was the final speaker of the evening, so I wanted to make sure I kept everyone awake on their toes. So I did a really fun format, and we've done it before with different webinars on like to choose your own adventure. But this time I'm just going to go through it very methodically so that we can all retain it. Next week, I'm also going to send you, I have what's called, you'll see why, the Hitchhiker's Guide to AI Adoption and Automation for HR. You'll see why it's titled that. I'm still working on it a little bit, so I'll make sure I'll send that to you next week when I send out the presentation and that, or the recording. And that will be so you can have access to all this information in a few pages rather than try to remember it all, because there's a lot here, and it will just make life a little bit easier. Okay. And then will the presentation be okay? If you have to jump off, yes, it will be recorded and will be sent out next week. And I will also give you the kind of guidebook as well. So don't worry about that. Thanks for coming. And as long as you can stay, that's great. Okay. Oh, and I should mention that my partner, Camara Toffolo, is in the comments. So she might share links as we go. So if you see those are ones we've collaborated on, just so you have everything you need. And like I said, I would love to be able to share the guide with you today, but I'm just still working on a few final touches for that. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Amy Davies, and I am the CEO of a company called First 30. I also host a podcast called the Coffee and Law Podcast. Camara is going to share that in the comments as well, a link to that. It's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's really been growing in popularity among our HR community. So we talk to employment lawyers, and they share all kinds of updates with our audience, and they're excellent. And we're just about to release one in the next couple weeks on parental leave, because there's been some updates there. So if these things are things that interest you, it might be worth checking out. And I wrote a book a few years ago. I've been slowly working on my second book. I wrote a book all about having a successful career in a reorg world, one where we're constantly losing and changing our jobs. And I'm working on my second, it's called The Spark in the Dark. And the second one is creating a praise culture. And I'm working through that one right now. And I don't know if anyone else is a Star Trek enthusiast. I don't even know why I need to put this in here, but fun fact. And I'm a dog mom, and Jeff and I have in common that we're very caring and loving pet parents. We're also people parents, but we tend to talk more about the dogs these days anyway. So First 30 as a business, I'm going to talk a little bit about it just to put it in context for the technology we're using. But First 30 has an outplacement and career transition program that has been very well received, both by our clients and our participants. Camara, who's on the call today, leads our participant experience. And, if you're evaluating outplacement suppliers, we're going to talk today about getting ahead of needing any services, outplacement or otherwise. If you're trying to get ahead and learn what is out there, by all means, you're most welcome to book time with me. And I'm happy to share our program. And it will always be informal, so you never have to feel under pressure or anything like that. But it's been we've made a lot of changes to keep up with today's market in the program as well, that are working out and have been very well received. Okay, now on to today. I really feel like I love Ted Lasso. I don't know if anyone else here does too. But what I loved most about the show, I still remember that scene where he was throwing darts and talking about it gives me goosebumps to this day, where he talked about his kind of superpower is that he is curious, and how much of a competitive edge that has given him. And I hear people talk about AI and automation and new HR tech and technology in general as scary, but I would reframe it myself and say, wow, this is exciting. This is something to get curious about. And I know we all have big jobs and a lot of other things on our plate, but technology is one of these pieces that I talk to some of my friends and clients, and they're like, I don't want to hear anything else about AI. And I get it. I actually do get it. But the problem is that it is here, and it's here to stay. And we really will be benefit personally and professionally from being able to understand how to use it to help us in our roles. And, everyone on this call today is going to be at a different phase. So sometimes it might feel like this is like, oh, I already know this, Amy. And then some of it is more about us working as coaches to the people in our organizations. And we're going to talk about why that's important in a minute as well. Just a little housekeeping note. I did a little LinkedIn poll on whether we think organizations are clearly distinguishing between AI and automation in conversations. And I found that a lot of people seem to agree with me, because I do think that people rarely understand the difference. And I wanted to just explain the difference in very complex terms and simple terms. Actually, Jeff put up a post, and I took this from the comment someone made yesterday about a post about this session. So I thought, oh, this is actually a really good thing to share. So he had talked about the difference between deterministic automation and AI. And so deterministic automation is when the outcome is already predetermined. So it's in the name. And if you program the system so that if X happens, then so does Y, and the outcome is predictable, it happens the same thing. It happens the same way every time. And then there's heuristic AI, which is learning. It's generating responses based on judgment that you've set up parameters for, but the answers are not fixed. They may vary depending on the AI's reasoning. So they sound complicated, but automation versus AI, X then Y, and then the other is just when the AI reasoning happens. I think what is causing some of the confusion is that we're using AI to build the automation. We're asking AI, how do we do this? And the two are connecting in our minds. So it's just really great to know the difference, because automation tools can be even more powerful and really easy to set up once we learn how to do it the first time. So that's a really exciting thing to learn about. And it's just important to know the difference, because it will help you scale your HR tech and build the right tech stack for your business as well. Okay, so this is my one little word of caution. I really do think we're in the era of the hare, meaning that slow and steady may not really win the race anymore, as much as I love this parable myself. I do think that we are in a very, very fast time in our professional life. And we do get calls from our outplacement clients saying, we really like this employee. They've been amazing. They've been here for, 10 years. But even though they're great, they just want to do things the way they've always been done. And we just simply cannot operate that way anymore. And I wanted to share this for two reasons. One, because we can all fall into this, like we don't like change, and we're going to talk about that. But we also want to act as coaches to our business partners and help them understand the importance of learning new systems and being curious. And obviously, you just can't force someone to be resourceful, but there are ways to help compel them. And we're going to talk about in a kind way, and that can be really effective and really help out your team. And it's just moving fast. Like there's so many data points out there. I thought I'd just share one to say we're moving very quickly. In fact, about a year ago, I ran a session on HR and AI with someone else, and we were starting from the ground up, like using ChatGPT and starting to use Claude. Everyone is now. So it just shows how far we've come in such a short time. That was the starting point of the conversation, even within the last year, it might have been. Okay, so This is another fun fact. I did hitchhike across Europe when I was in my early 20s. And that's why I've called the guide that I'll send you next week the Hitchhiker's Guide to AI and Automation. But I did learn a lot, and I thought some of those lessons can be applied to how we can adopt AI and HR tech in general. And I would say that, starting small and growing. So when I hitchhiked, I actually started in English speaking countries, Scotland, for one. Sometimes, depending on where you are in Scotland, the accent can be quite difficult to understand, but I made my way. And not experimenting with technology alone, building a community. So when I hitchhike, I actually hitchhiked with someone who was from the military, who was quite a big man who was trained in combat. So I felt quite a lot safer doing that, as you can imagine. And evaluate your situation carefully. There's sometimes when you shouldn't choose to hitchhike, some areas where it's really not going to be safe for you, and maybe cars you shouldn't get into. And it's the same thing with AI and automation. We don't want to get too far too quickly and build things that we can't go back, that will be difficult to take back, or make mistakes that are going to be have real consequences until we've taken baby steps. And I would say that's what I've done with First 30 as well, is take baby steps to getting to something a lot bigger and more meaningful. But there's going to be more risk, and more reward potentially. But I de-risk the entire process by taking it one step at a time. And we can do that in our processes as well. And if it works, the upside is huge. For me, I saved a ton of money not having to get train passes. And for us, it will help us flourish in our careers. It will help us help other people. And it will also help us create systems that can be very meaningful for our colleagues and employees and business partners. And some ways to get started taking it to the next level, if you're depending on where you're at in your AI journey, is just to take a 60-page policy and turn it into an FAQ. That would be amazing for you, but it would also be amazing for your team members. Summarizing survey comments, that's a really good one as well. Hopefully, if you have an external survey partner, they do a lot of that for you, but you might not. You might be running your own surveys, and this would be a great way to use the system. Drafting an onboarding schedule, comparing resumes with job ads, and rewriting a difficult email in 3 different tones. I always tell people, if you say you get an email and you want to respond emotionally, first of all, sleep on it. But actually now you don't necessarily have to sleep on it, because you can get AI to help you respond to tough emails as well. I don't know if anyone's used it for that purpose. I will hold my hand up and say that yes, I have used it that way, and I find it very helpful. Okay, so, and with every ride, you get closer to your destination, even if there's bumps in the road, and you're thinking about it one ride at a time. So, learning in little bite-sized chunks to build up to a bigger outcome can really be meaningful and helpful. I don't know if anyone else has read a book called The Catalyst, How to Change Anyone's Mind, but in general, as an HR professional, it's an excellent read and one I would really recommend, because we don't like change. We really cognitively, we resist any kind of change. Change is scary, change is the unknown, and our colleagues will resist change. And if you're trying to help your team members to embrace new technology, there are ways that you can do that, and it will freak them out. And there's ways that you can do that, and it will really help ease them into it and get them to a point where they're incredibly comfortable with new ideas, new technology, changes in an organization. And so that, and like location moves. And I remember when I was working in offices, there was always the moving from having an office to open plan. And that was such a huge change, and people really panicked about it. And I think if the leaders had read this book, they would be in a lot better spot when they were making those changes. Okay, I'm just going to check here. Yeah, people do resist uncertainty for sure. Okay, so, oops, sorry. So when we're thinking about changing, when we're thinking about how to help people through change, Thank you. I was like, two people raised their hand. So what happened? It was my mic. I was trying to get rid of the chat because it was covering the screen. After all these years of using Zoom, I still can't get it right. But thank you very much for that alert. Okay, so as I was saying, I'll go back a little bit. We want to meet people where they are, right? If we try to get them to come to us, then it can be really tough, right? Because we're already in one place. You know, we've talked in past webinars about the change curve. Once we've got used to something, we're already over here. We've gone through all those emotions. But when someone's just learning something new, or they're learning that they have to implement a new technology and it's right away, they still have to go through all of those resistance phases and emotional phases. And then we want to make sure that we're listening before we're pushing. So that's going to be, you know, important, because then we can really understand where someone is coming from. We want to make sure that we're reducing their fear and friction. And if we understand these things, then we can help them that way. And starting small, we'll talk about that in how to do that in a sec. And then let people experience a little bit of success. And that's part of starting small, because if you start small, it's easy to have very simple successes to begin with, and then move on to bigger projects and bigger things that are going to be more important as we move forward. So tech adoption, as you can imagine, I mean, I felt this way. I'm sure a lot of us felt this way. It can make us feel very vulnerable. And I go back to what I was talking about at the beginning about the difference between AI and automation. Here we are trying to learn all these new terms. And I remember being in corporate I was in corporate for almost 2 decades, and feeling in meetings like, oh my goodness, what are all these acronyms? What are all these new words? And it's like, there's always someone in the room that knows them all. And you feel like that one person. It can it can make us feel that imposter syndrome really quickly. But one thing I would say, and I would say coaching people on this can be very helpful to them, we're all learning this. This is all happening. This is happening quickly for all of us. If you're in the Ontario region right now, we're all experiencing this crazy, overcast, smoky air, and it's kind of happening all at once. Think of it like AI, automation, technology. It's happening to all of us all at once, and we should be helping each other and making sure that people are feeling confident even though they're unsure, and that they're not afraid to ask. So they're thinking, will I look stupid, right? Will I look stupid if I ask what this acronym means or what this word means? Will this replace me? That is a big one. And the really difficult thing about that question is there are some cases where it will, but there's also going to be new opportunity. And the opportunities will exist for people who are willing to adopt new technologies, try doing things in new ways. Will I have time to learn? Like, how quickly is this all going to happen if we're adopting these new technologies? And what if everyone else gets it before I do? We're all at different phases of that learning curve, right? So how do we make sure that everyone feels like and some people are much more hard on themselves. So sometimes they're actually keeping pace and they don't realize it because they're just being so hard on themselves. And of course, what if I fail? And that's scary for everybody. If you want people to adopt AI, like the worst thing we can be told is or made to feel is like we're already behind. And I do think when big words are being used or new terms are being used and acronyms are being thrown around, that can really make people feel like they're left behind, even though maybe they're really not as much as they think. And then helping someone experience a really small win, show them how AI can save them 20 minutes on a task that they hate. Some examples of that would be things summarizing long documents or taking a policy like we talked about before and summarizing that, or notes, if there's meeting notes that can be easily, I mean, I know we all have AI agents to do that now, but maybe some people are still writing things out that they shouldn't be. So helping them understand that. Some of the best technology, like this, I think there's a lot of confusion about what technology looks like from the back end. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about software as an ecosystem. We see these things as one comprehensive tool, but they're there's a lot going on in the background, and we have recently launched our new employee onboarding technology, which is very exciting. We had a technology that we used before, so this is not new to us. We actually did all the things I'm talking about. We got out there, we had clients, we learned from them, we understood how we needed to evolve our technology in order to make it better, and to make it more useful and more sticky. And I would say that when you get into these client meetings, sometimes you're being asked questions, or there's expectations of the technology and technology in general that come as a surprise. So I thought it might be helpful if I shared some of that, so we can all understand maybe what questions to ask suppliers that will make sense and will also help us get the understanding we need to know, will this actually work and will it solve the problem that I need it to solve? And I do think we think that it's, you push a button, magic happens, and then you get this result, right? Like this platform does what it's supposed to do, and it's great and exciting. But that's not exactly the way it's happening in the back end right now, because you're pushing a button and in the background, 5 systems are talking to each other, automation runs, AI might check something, a database updates, an email sends, an employee sees the result, right? That is what in fact is happening, even though, so this is, I'm using our technology as an example. So for our onboarding technology, we have this beautiful platform that employees can use, and they click on their day and they learn about the resources from that day. And our HR clients can look at all of their metrics and see their dashboard and see everything that's happening with their employee. And that's exactly what it feels like. You click, magic happens, and something appears, right? But in the background, and I won't make everyone dizzy by keeping this on, this isn't ours exactly, but I pulled it because it's very similar. This is what's happening. And that's not just our technology. That is so much of the technology that's landing in front of us that we need to evaluate. This is what it's doing in the background. So as I said, this is like, that's what is generating all of that. So it's essentially an automation that's set up in the background that gets it to do all of these things and to run effectively. So when I talk about it being an ecosystem, it's really what we're looking at is not one technology anymore. It's a tech stack, and a supplier is selling you it as one technology, but they're really taking several different technologies, and then they're offering it to you as solving one problem. And I know different I don't know exactly how they're all built, but I do have other tech founders that I'm friends with, and I know the background of their technology as well, and it operates very similarly. And so when we are integrating technology into our organizations, we often think of it like pouring concrete. We have like this beautiful one system, right? That's what we all want. And that is the gold standard. Unfortunately, we're just not there technologically. We don't have one company doing everything. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, even though it might feel as though there is one solution that should be able to provide all of these services, often our HRIS. Unfortunately, that is just not the case. And if you do have questions, again, feel free to put them in the chat. Oh, Jeff, you can live free, because we do have Jeff Waldman on the call today, and he is absolute tech. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Jeff, but he could probably answer any question, because he is, so much, Jeff. I've learned a lot from him. So worth asking your questions in the chat as well, even if I can't answer them right away. So there's different levels of integration. And I thought this was really important to mention, because as a technology supplier, we are asked this question all the time. And people have this high standard for how things will integrate. I understand why, but light integration is actually much more effective than I imagine people are realizing in some cases. Systems can always be loosely connected through URLs. There's a few other ways to do that as well, but it allows the technology to be up and running very quickly. It's fast, it's flexible. You can access it as the end. So if you're the client internally as HR, you can actually make changes to it. You can get your supplier to quickly update it and change it. The deeper the integration, the more layers you're going to have to work through. Now, some of you are going to work in businesses where it's required that you have deep integrations, you have huge budgets for technology. Great, that's fine. Maybe these aren't the types of technologies you're ever going to look at because you're going to have an HRIS or certain larger systems like SAP, and you're going to avoid any other smaller systems. It often means that you may not be able to solve certain problems that you need to solve in your organization, but it's just a decision that companies make. I understand why they make it, to control costs, to control the adoption of all kinds of technology everywhere. But if you're a small or medium-sized organization, then you might want to think about adopting technology that does not require a deeper integration, both to save on costs, but also to be nimble. And then, of course, there's modern integration. I think a good example of that would be 1Password, things like that. They're more stable, but they're also more set up, again, and they're harder to change out if you decide that it's not the right technology for your company. And then we have the very deep systems that are connected and operate as one. But again, these are expensive. So there's some integrations are like acquaintances. So you can think of that as a light integration. They still talk to each other, but they're not as close as good friends. So moderate would be more like good friends. And then a deep connection are like roommates. You just share everything. So deep integrations do require time, they require money and IT support. And we talked about the fact we're moving quickly, and sometimes we need to implement technology quickly. So we don't have the gift of time. We don't always have huge budgets, and we either don't have IT support, and sometimes it's better. Sometimes IT can be great to work with, and then other times there's things we don't want to have to rely on IT for if we want to make a small update or change to a system. I'm thinking obviously of onboarding, because sometimes we change out resources or things like that, and it's just so simple to do it if you don't have to go through another department. And so that can be a little bit harder. And then smaller linked systems, of course, can move faster. Automation can connect tools surprisingly well, and flexibility does matter. Imagine you implement a system and you're like, oh my goodness, this is not working the way I thought it was. Hopefully you've been able to pilot it, and you would be able to understand that in advance. But maybe a new technology comes along and you're like, I want to implement this instead. This gives you some flexibility for that. Oh, Jeff has to leave, so don't ask Jeff any questions now. Bye, Jeff. And we have to remember that roommates are not always better than acquaintances. I hope my daughter's about to go off to university and have a roommate for the first time. Hopefully she doesn't feel this way, because it's her best friend that she's going to be roommates with. But that's how we might think of it, is the deep integration is a roommate. The light integration is more like an acquaintance. And they can both have their time and place for sure. Okay, so evaluating HR technology is a new skill. And it's not just HR technology, it's just technology in general for our organizations. It does require a new way of thinking. So we really want, like, my goal today is not to convince you to buy more technology. Of course, if you want to talk to me about our onboarding technology, that's fine. But I'm really not here to try to get you to buy technology. I really want you to think about buying better technology, the technology that actually solves the problems you're trying to solve and is easy for you to use and creates an excellent employee experience. And we get the same questions as suppliers all the time. Is it fully integrated? Where is the data stored? This is a really important one to talk about. Where is the data stored? That matters if you are storing, if it's your HRIS, that data needs to be stored according to your company policy, and it needs to be locked down, because that's really, information that was very high risk, but there's a lot of information that's low risk. And I'll give you the example because we have two different technologies that work together at First 30. We have our onboarding platform where we store almost no information. We store links to your resources that are behind your firewall already. So those are not high risk. We have your employee's first and last name and their email address. Again, not very high risk data, right? We also have an AI agent that operates as an onboarding buddy where your employees will ask it questions and it will give them answers based on your company information. We store that data very differently. So that is stored geographically wherever our clients are. And that's really important because that's data that is stored by Microsoft standards. So it's a Microsoft technology. So that it's easy for me to explain how they're separated because we separate them with our own business. Why does this matter? Talked about tech stacks. These technologies you're buying, they're serving one purpose for you, but they're built on they're a tech stack of different technologies that some entrepreneur has built and is delivering to you. Now, if you need the data to be stored in a particular region in a certain way, the technology they are using to build this particular solution that's really good at doing what you need it to do, they're not necessarily using technology that's capable of data storage. That's why people can be elusive when you ask them these questions. Suppliers can be elusive because what they're trying to explain to you is this, that they've got a huge tech stack that they're using. And it's not Canadian. If you're in Canada, it might be US technology that they need to use in order to create this experience. I hope that makes sense. It's a long explanation, but this is a question that comes up a lot, and it's an important one. First, the question is what data needs to be stored, and then how high risk is that? And if it's low risk, don't worry about it as much. But if it's high risk, like the agent that I was talking about, then it's really important, or your HRIS, then it's really important. And can we use 1Password? Most systems are pretty simple to log into, and you only have to log into them once now. And depending, again, at the risk of the data that's stored in them, maybe there's only a certain level of protection you need for them. So those are just some things we get asked a lot, and sometimes it gets surprising. We're like, why would you ask us about this technology? But of course, it's difficult to understand when you're being told by your organization that you need to ask these questions, and they do make sense, but they don't make sense for every technology. So the questions we can ask that will be very helpful is what data is actually stored? Like, what do you need from us for the system to be operational and work the way we need it to work? How long does it take to implement realistically? And that's where the conversation around integration can come in as well. How much IT involvement is required? That's an important question because that's also going to influence how long it takes to launch. But it also will matter because it's like, what if the system needs to be updated? How is that going to happen? I'm thinking of something like an LMS, right? If you have an LMS that you have to go to IT to update all the time when you need different features or you need it to include different information, that is going to create a really difficult situation for you because how do you then update it quickly when things change quickly, right? So and then sometimes we communicate changes that need to be made and then they're not made the way we expect them to be made. So that's why it's nice if we don't need that deep integration that we don't actually have it. Asking a supplier what features are on the roadmap is a good question to ask so you can understand not just how is the technology functioning today, but how will it function in 6 months from now, a year from now, because things are changing so quickly and they already probably have on their mind what features they're going to be adding to their systems. And then how much ongoing maintenance is required from us. Like for our onboarding program, 0, because we do all the upkeep. But with other platforms, you're actually using them and adding information to them. So you will need to be responsible for some of the maintenance of the technology itself. And then can we pilot or test it before a full rollout? I think that's always really important with any technology. You want to test with a small segment of your with your employees. And I would say really, if you're looking at HR technology partners, the best ones, AI or otherwise, are the ones who really understand the problem that is being solved. Maybe not the salesperson you're talking to isn't, they're not the creator of the technology, but maybe learning a little bit about who the person is that came up with this idea and how it was created, so that it's not just a software tool, that it's actually the person who created it really truly understands how you will be using it. Well, when we were young, we were very good at making friends and expanding our network with anyone who had like the same color t-shirt on as us. But now, as we get older, our network can kind of start to close a little bit. And I just think when we are thinking about learning AI and learning new tech, we need to be intentional about how we expand our network and then in turn, how we expand our knowledge. And for me, I'm lucky because I mean, I there's huge benefits to being inside a large organization. You can learn so much, but it can be limiting because you're just learning what is inside that organization. Like when you go to a conference or when you speak to different suppliers, you're going to learn new things that you didn't expect in some cases, and you're going to expand your network, and it's going to take you out to more, people who can help you learn. So I always recommend, and I used to do this when I was in corporate, is I would plan supply. It can be a supplier day, it can be a supplier lunch, it could be a supplier half day. And I would have suppliers in who are doing new things, and I would give them 30 minutes, and they would give us information. So you can invite new HR tech suppliers to present to your team. You're not promising them business. Maybe it's not even a problem you necessarily are thinking about solving. You've heard of them, you think what they're doing is interesting, and you want to learn more. And I don't think any supplier is going to turn down that opportunity. Ask for 20 or 30 minutes of a demo or a problem solving session. Hey, we have these. So, someone like me, for instance, I know people who do have a succession planning technology. I know someone else who has a great reference check technology. I'm not working in a silo. I know tons of other tech entrepreneurs. So if you ever booked a meeting with me and said, Amy, here are the problems we're trying to solve in our organization, what can you tell me? I would have a lot to say and I would be able to help direct you. A lot of entrepreneurs, we work together and we know what's happening out there. You want to learn how different tools and AI models are evolving, and that they can give you some great insight. And then in return, you may not purchase their product. You might recommend them to someone else you know who needs it, and you can give them honest feedback in exchange for their time. So just agree to have a follow up and send them an email, collect the feedback. You can use AI to do it. Turn on Granola or your whatever else you have to take notes during the meeting, and then send them back the feedback. That will help them a lot. And I think most good suppliers would be very open to that opportunity. And it saves you from having to go to a conference and spend days and spend money. Maybe you don't have that time and maybe you don't have budget for conferences. Bring the suppliers to you. And then you can explore ideas before there's even pressure to buy anything from people. Sorry. And then that also gives you the chance to expand your supplier network. Okay, so you can meet suppliers. I always think this is a good idea, especially for us with our outplacement, right? Like meet suppliers before you need suppliers can be so such. Oh, thanks, Sheena. Yeah, I do really like. I have to say, not all my ideas are amazing, but I do like the idea of these days because they can bring so much value. There's so much going on out there in the world. But anyway, with our outplacement program, for instance, it often comes up all of a sudden that you need outplacement and then you're scrambling to find a good supplier. Meet with people like me or others before you even need us. And then once things happen, you're like, okay, I know what I'm going to do next, rather than trying to figure it all out when you're under a lot of pressure already. Okay, this is the last thing we're going to be talking about today, but I believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. And I also think it's really funny because I was running an event a few weeks ago with some HR leaders, and it just seems like everyone doesn't love their HRIS. And I do think that HRS, there's some amazing ones out there. It's not that they're bad. I actually think we have such a high expectation of our HRIS that it can't possibly deliver on everything. And it actually can't do everything well. It's designed for a specific purpose. And often it will do that one thing really, really well. It's our people process, like our people management tool. But it's not doing things like succession planning. It's doing onboarding, but it's more of a checklist. It's not, doesn't have all the bells and whistles of a system that's built specifically for that purpose. And every technology, every single technology has its strengths and it has its blind spots. So we know all of this. I mean, you know that HRIS does all these things really, really well, great at process, but not designed for a people experience. Here's the problem. When an HRIS is sold to an organization, the CFO might be involved and they'll hear it does this, this, and this, right? So they're expecting that it does all of these things. So when we go to them and say, hey, we actually need another technology for succession planning or for onboarding, they're like, wait a second, our HRIS has an onboarding module. Why can't we use that? But that isn't, it's not what they were thinking. And we often use the same words we use for onboarding as an example. This is one I know well, and that's why I always talk about it. But for onboarding, there's orientation, what everyone in an organization needs to know. There's on-the-job training, and there's paperwork. And those are 3 different areas of onboarding. It's not going to be doing all of those things very, very well. Okay. And your HRS, again, it's one very important part of your technology ecosystem for sure. And again, with onboarding as an example, it's more than paperwork. Effective onboarding, like effective onboarding experiences and orientation experiences really benefit from thoughtful design in the same way that succession planning does as well, in the same way that doing reference checks does as well. I keep bringing these up because I'm just speaking to these folks, so it's on my mind. But we want to just remember that HRIS, again, great for some things, not great for others, even though they say they have a module for X. It may just not be their area of expertise. That's all. And then with onboarding or with any system that we implement that's designed for a specific purpose, it can go a long way in making employees feel like the company cares about them. And for onboarding, I always say it should be a babbling brook of information, not the avalanche that it often seems to be in some organizations. And the problems, it is always important to remember that the problems that we're trying to solve, they haven't changed much at all. It's the way that we're trying to solve them has changed, and the opportunity to solve them in new and exciting and effective ways. We're still trying to do all these things: hire great people, onboard employees effectively, improve engagement, retain talent, build leaders, create better employee experiences. So the needs that we have not changed. It's just we have some great tools to do it. And like I will go back to those supplier days, you find people that are doing these things well or at a conference. Maybe they're at a conference and they have a booth, but you're not going to that conference. So you can invite them in to do that. So that is my session. I am going to be talking specifically about onboarding in a few weeks, and Camara is going to put the link. I'll send it to you as well. You can register for that too if you want. And again, it's just an informal way to learn about a new system. It may not be for you, and you may think, oh, this is exactly what we need. I'll need to ask more questions about this. So maybe other suppliers run sessions like this too. It might be worth going. And often if you register for these things too, people will send you like I'm sending you the recording of this next week. And you'll have that to refer to if you ever need that solution as well. So I invite you to that. And of course, if you want to talk to me about outplacement and career transition, you just want to learn about it, learn about our program, by all means, you're more than welcome to book time with me. I'll send you an email after this and you can book time if you want, if you have any questions. Even if you have questions, if you have a problem you're trying to solve and you want me to suggest other solutions providers, I'm very happy to connect you with people in my network, and people like attract like. And I think that the people in my network that I've had the opportunity to meet and befriend are also the same. Like they're going to sit down and have a really honest conversation with you about the solutions that they have. Don't scan that because I actually updated that resource and I just have to make sure the right one's available to you. But the other thing I would say is our little podcast is really growing. And as I said, we have a one coming up in a week or two on parental leave, which is great. I just recorded that one, and I think you'll benefit from it. So you can join that as well. And of course, if we are already connected already, you're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And I think that's it. I'll just take a quick look at the chat. Yeah, I kind of went through that. I feel like it's a big presentation. I probably didn't need to go through it as quickly as I did because we still have, I've given you the gift of time. But if you have any questions, I'll look and see if there is a Q&A here. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Oh, someone telling me I'm on mute. Thank you. Oh, thanks so much. I do hope this is helpful. I know it's a lot at once, so I'll make sure that you do get that Hitchhiker's Guide to AI and Automation. And you're welcome to share it around if you find it a useful resource. And like I said, I'm always here if you have questions or you want to talk. And you know what? I don't have all the answers. No one does. And so if you want to have a conversation, maybe I can help point you in the right direction. Maybe I do have the answer, but I'm always having to talk. Oh, that Jennifer, you asked a really good question here, and I know you didn't get much of a response, but what are everyone's favorite HR AI tools? I think that's a very good question. It should actually be a really great question for LinkedIn too. And I know, Nancy, you've raised your hand, and I don't know how to let you speak, actually. I've never used the raise hand, but you're welcome to add a comment, and you're welcome to contact me after. But yeah, that is a really good question for LinkedIn, Jennifer. Maybe it's one I can ask next week. Maybe I should have asked it before I ran the session because it's a very good one. The last thing I'll say is I find people are starting to build their own tools internally. And I think that can be really good for simple automations. It can be excellent. But I think we have to ask ourselves, how complex is what we're building? How much will I have to maintain it? I do think companies are sometimes, they're like wanting people to build internal tools, but internal tools come with their own baggage too. And they have to be maintained, they have to be updated. So sometimes it's good if you're being asked to do that, to speak to suppliers and find out what the difference would be. And sometimes the cost difference isn't even much at all. So it's better to adopt the technology or to license it rather than build it internally. So I did mean to bring that up during the presentation. And I do think that that's worth considering. Now you have 10 minutes to yourself. So again, I'm here if you ever want to reach out. And thank you again for joining. I really love this topic, and I'm so glad that you are all able to join me today. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.